Hello and welcome to another Magic 2015 gameplay. Today we're revisiting an old favorite, and that's Izzet Burn. The reason we're taking another look is that now we've added Think Twice to the deck, which does add another dimension to the deck and makes it, I think, more interesting and fun to play with. So if you haven't seen the original version, I'll put a link over here. But yeah, let's take a look at the improved version. Starting with Quicken, it's just an instant that draws a card. The rest of the text might as well be blank. But the fact that it's an instant and draws a card means it will trigger cards like Talrand, Sky Summoner, generating a blue Drake token with flying, and cards like Kiln Fiend that gets +3/+0 whenever you play an instant or sorcery, or even cards like Gutter Snipe that deal 2 damage to the opponent whenever you play an instant or sorcery. So, playing an instant for 1 blue mana is not a bad idea, and the fact that it draws a card means you don't lose any card advantage by doing it. Then we have Vapor Snag, which can get rid of the opponent's creature for a while, also deals 1 damage, and again triggers all the cards I mentioned. And occasionally you can use it on your own creature to save it from removal if it's really important. But yeah, Vapor Snag is just an awesome card in this deck. And moving on, we have Artful Dodge, which works wonders with Kiln Fiend, making him unblockable. Then it also has Flashback, which means you can cast it twice, trigger all those cards twice the damage, twice the fun. Then Think Twice, I already briefly mentioned, draws us a card and also has Flashback, which means it does provide card advantage while triggering all those awesome cards. So it's just a perfect card for this deck. Then we have Talrand Sky Summoner, which is a pretty big deal once it hits the table. If the opponent can't get rid of it right away, then he's gonna be in trouble. And then Shock, just a cheap removal spell, can also be used to go to the opponent's face, and more importantly, triggers all the creatures we have. Then Skullcrack doesn't kill creatures, but does go to the opponent's face, dealing 3 damage. And then Kiln Fiend is probably the main win condition in the deck, and does a lot of damage very quickly, and it's probably the best 2-drop you can wish for. Then Krenko's Command adds a Goblin tokens to the battlefield, but the important fact here is that it's a sorcery, so it will trigger all those cards, and the Goblin tokens are pretty good at chump blocking while you get in the damage with cards like Kiln Fiend. And occasionally you can just swarm the board and the opponent can't have enough blockers out, and you can deal the last points of damage with your goblins. Then Gutter Snipe is another solid win condition, dealing 2 damage to the opponent whenever you cast an instant or sorcery. And he just sits on the board usually, won't attack very often, won't block very often, but it does add up very quickly, and it's also a must-answer card for the opponent. Then we have Cunning Spark Mage, which is good against the opposing token decks, and can also add up with a Shock, for example, to deal 3 damage rather than 2, to take out bigger creatures. And if it doesn't have a creature to deal with, it can simply ping the opponent for 1 damage, which also starts adding up with all the other cards you have. And then we have a Stormbreath Dragon, in case all the other cards aren't enough. Then you can fly over with the big dragon and deal a lot of damage. And important that it has protection from white, means it can either block or attack into a Baneslayer Angel, which is a pretty important card. The mana base, I'm only running 4 dual lands. You could change them with some of the trial lands if you want to confuse your opponents, using the Crumbling Necropolis instead. But for simplicity, I just went for the Guild Gates. So yeah, that's it. Let's jump into a game. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks perfectly fine to me. We've got a Kiln Fiend and some more damage down the line. Let's start off with a Guild Gate, since we're not planning on playing this Vapor Snag and we want to have our red for turn 2. Let's see what the opponent's up to. leads with a Rakdos Guildgate. Interesting. So I'm not too confident that this Kiln Fiend is gonna survive, but we'll give it a shot. Next turn, probably going with a Krankos command to make some more creatures and pump the Kiln Fiend. But we'll see what our opponent does here. Mountain and a Goblin Arsonist. Alright. Another Goblin. Alright, this means that our Kiln Fiend is not gonna survive. Even if we Vapor Snag one of the Goblins, there's still the second one which is gonna block it and then deal 1 damage. So now the question becomes, do we even play our Krankos command pre-combat? We could also just sit back on the Kiln Fiend and hope to draw into an Artful Dodge. All interesting decisions. The thing is that if we play our Krankos command here, then the opponent can just chump one of the tokens and kill the other one, which is not very good for us. So we would have to waste our Vapor Snag on a 1-drop. So these Arsonists are actually quite annoying here. Let's see. I think our best bet is actually just sitting back here. And we could play the Krankos command and not attack. But I think... Let's see. I do want our opponent to actually attack us, so I'll just say go. Might seem a little weird here, what I'm doing. But by not playing the Krankos command, I'm enticing the opponent to attack with his Arsonists, so we can attack back for a lot more damage. And we're also representing a counterspell, but that doesn't matter too much. Alright, I see what our opponent's up to. So he's got a sacrifice outlet here with the Connoisseur. So he can at any time ping us twice, ping the Kiln Fiend twice by sacking the 2 goblins. Alright, let's not block. Let's see, do we want to Vapor Snag this right now? Perhaps force the opponent to sack his 2 goblins. I don't think we do. Think we can play it on our turn. Alright, there's an Artful Dodge. Now the problem is that there's a sack outlet here. So let's start by Vapor Snagging the Connoisseur and hope our opponent doesn't sack in response. He could still go for it. But he does have this Arsonist that can block. So he doesn't know we have this Artful Dodge in hand. So he probably doesn't sacrifice it, thinking the Goblin can still block. Alright, so all according to plan here. And now we can play the Artful Dodge to pump the Kiln Fiend even more. And we'll also play a Krankos command to deal 10 damage here. So a pretty interesting board state there. I think we made the right call. Opponent's at 10. Now has to replay the Connoisseur. Is likely to sacrifice the goblins right away, because we now have an Artful Dodge in the graveyard. But that does mean that we now have these goblins which can start attacking. He can sack the goblins at any time here, so he isn't really forced to do it right away. But you never know what happens. Alright, meanwhile we have these 2 Skullcracks. So our opponents add a virtual 3 life here, which is not bad. Let's see. I think... I think we do force the sack here, just to get rid of the goblins. We'll go to attacks, and now we'll sack, is my guess. Nope. Alright, I'll go to attacks. And I think now's the time, yeah. Right, so there's 1 goblin gone. And another one. Alright. We could have maybe attacked with both goblins, but then we only would have gotten in for 1 damage, with the opponent blocking one of them. So I'll just hang on to these Skullcracks, play them if our opponent perhaps tries to gain life in some way, which does seem unlikely, and then just hope to draw into a Gutter Snipe maybe, or just more Skullcracks also would work. Opponent on an interesting sacrifice outlet deck, and it does seem to work quite well with the Arsonists. And he does go for an attack. Alright, no blocks. Alright. Mountain. That's not great. So let's just pass a turn. Let's see, we have 1 Skullcrack left. Torrent wouldn't be bad. And then I think Gutter Snipe is the best draw we can have. Another Connoisseur. If he sacks this one to that one, then he also grows the Elemental. But he's just gonna attack... no. Coming in with both. If we try to block with both goblins, then the first one dies to first strike, the Elemental grows, and then the second one dies too. So that wouldn't be a very good play. Alright, I guess we hit the trifecta here. Opponents probably a little confused now. Let's make sure to leave 1 red up. And that's number 2. And that's number 3. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. 1 Guild Gate, no second land, but we are on the draw. However, we don't have a Kiln Fiend nor a Gutter Snipe, so I think we can try another hand. Alright, this one's interesting. We do have the lands to cast our Torrent, and we have a Think Twice and a Quicken, so our hand can change quite radically. I think I'm okay with this. It's not the most explosive start probably, but if our opponent can't remove the Torrent, then we're gonna be in a good spot. Shock is not bad. I think we can still lead with the Guild Gate here. Other option is to play the island to play a Quicken right away, but I think we want to keep the Quicken as long as we can. Next turn we're probably just gonna play the Think Twice, however. And alright. Opponent perhaps on a Exalted deck in the banned colors. Skullcrack. I don't think we shock the Squire here. It's not a very important target. Instead, drawing a card with Think Twice is probably what we'll end up doing. But we can do that in our opponent's turn, since we already played our land. The worst our opponent could do here is play a Warmonk, as we only have the Skullcrack to deal with the life gain for one turn. Opponent could counter a Think Twice, but I'm okay with that. Vapor Snag and another shock. Let's play an island to represent a counterspell and say go. Now I'm sort of tempted to use the shock on the Squire, otherwise we can still flash back the Think Twice. Alright. Yeah, I think I can take another hit here. I'm probably not gonna play Tauren next turn, since I wanna try and get value out of it right away. And if the opponent has a counter spell or a removal spell, then Tauren hasn't done his job, which is to win the game for us. So I think we can say go. Opponent might have his own Think Twices. Let's see, do we have to discard? We do. I guess in that case we can afford to shock here. Well, that's perfectly fine with me. Means our Tauren didn't get countered. And now we can Think Twice end of turn again. We are taking a beating from this little guy, but Tauren's gonna make it all good. Yeah. Kiln Fiend. Right, so we can play our Kiln Fiend here to bait another counterspell. And if he goes unmolested, then he can also start dealing a lot of damage. And I think next turn, perhaps we can play the Tauren with a shock and a Vapor Snag, perhaps, to start making some tokens. We don't want to see life gain from the opponent, because that could be a pretty big problem. I'll take another hit, as we want to save our instance now. Arrest. I think I'm okay with that. We can play our Tauren. We could also Vapor Snag the Kiln Fiend, but that doesn't seem great, as it would set us back quite a bit. Oh, let's flash this back. If it works. Yep. Alright. So now we can play our Tauren. opponent can't counter it. And now we have instant speed tokens available in Vapor Snag, Shock, Quicken, or even Skullcrack. But we won't use them right away in case our opponent plays some sort of sweeper. Warmonk we can't counter, but we can Vapor Snag it to buy some time. Voyage's End. I wanted to respond to that, but I guess it doesn't matter all that much. Just means we'll have summoning sick tokens rather than non-summoning sick tokens. Alright, let's try that again. And let's try and pause the timers when we have to. A Hydra we cannot deal with right away. And it did reveal another exalted creature, which I think we want to kill right now. And we can also Voyage's End the Warmonk if he decides to attack with it. We could also Skullcrack, but I think we want to keep that as a surprise. We could also Voyage's End, Vapor Snag the Hydra, but that doesn't seem great, so yeah, I'm okay with snagging the Monk here. Alright, let's lead with a Think Twice, always a good idea. Another Torrent. But we don't want to play this one because it's legendary. So now we can pass a turn after attacking with these Drake tokens. And we still have Think Twice, Quickens and Skullcracks available. The question is, do we block the Hydra with the token? And I think we can take a hit from it. Blue, green and white doesn't really have that much reach. A Guard Gomazoa, interesting. Opponent's gonna attack. We will allow it. And end of turn, let's see what's most efficient here. Quicken, I think we can cast one Think Twice, leaving up blue. And then cast a Quicken as well. Alright. Quite the Air Force. Let's play another Think Twice. Alright, we've got some chump blockers now, but we don't want to commit anymore, as we've got this game pretty well in hand. I guess we can play a Guildgate here, since we will likely play Skullcrack and Quicken. And let's attack with all the Drake tokens. Our opponent can block one with the Gomazoa. but we'll still take 8 damage and likely be dead next turn. So our game plan of playing Talrand and winning the game with him worked out pretty nicely. We dodged a counter spell and a removal spell. And yep, that's not gonna do anything. We can even Skullcrack to rub it in. And then chum block with our goblin tokens, or even double block with a Drake token, doesn't really matter. Opponent's got 0 cards in hand, so this will work. Let's play another Quicken. Alright, let's see what's on top. Since our opponent already left, we're only wasting our time, so we might as well have some fun. There's a shock. Alright. So 1 Talrand, and that's about 10 tokens here. Not a bad deal. Alright, I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.